of 25th November 1988, a high school girl named Junko Furuta was heading back to her home from her part-time job. She was riding on her bicycle and was returning to her home on the same route she followed every day. While on her bicycle, suddenly a boy similar to her age comes to her, kicks her bicycle and runs off. Junko fell from her bicycle, and while she was getting up, another boy with the name Miyano also happened to be there at the time. He came to offer her help to walk her home safely. Junko knew him from her high school. He went to the same school as her. Junko took the help and let Miyano walk her to her home. Along the way, they both started chatting with each other, and soon, while walking, Junko didn't notice that Miyano was actually leading her to a nearby abandoned warehouse. Just as they reached the warehouse, he revealed his connections with the Yakuza and threatened her that he will kill her if she tried to escape, and with that, he began to rape her in that warehouse. Junko was trapped with him, and from there started the most gruesome crime to ever happen to a girl. Mentioning his connections with the Yakuza, Miyano raped Junko while threatening to kill her right in the warehouse. Then, from there, he took her to a hotel nearby and continued to rape to her yet once again. Junko was helpless in front of him and was following everything he was demanding from her. From the hotel, Miyano called all of his friends, Minato, Joe Ogura, Yasushi Watanabe, to brag about the rape. He bragged to them about the rape he just did with Junko, as he already had a crush on her from a long time from school. Over the phone, Ogura asked Miyano to keep Junko in captivity so that they too could rape her. He told him that they should keep her so that she could be raped and sexually assaulted by numerous other Yakuza members. The group actually had a history of gang rape, and they had also kept another girl in captivity before her who was released. However, Junko was not that fortunate. At around 3 a.m., Miyano took Junko to a park where Minato, Ogura, and Watanabe were waiting for both of them. They told her that they had gotten her address from one of her notebooks in her backpack, and that if she tried to escape from them, then they will send the Yakuza members to kill everyone in her family, her parents and both of her brothers. Then they took her to a house in the Ayase district of Adachi. It was owned by Minato's parents, and it was sort of their regular gang hangout. Upon reaching the house, Junko was gang raped by all of them. On November 27, Junko's parents were quite worried of their daughter being missing for 2 days, and so they contacted the police about their daughter's disappearance. The police acted upon the complaint and began to search for their missing daughter. The boys were quite worried by this. They were afraid that if the police continued the search for Junko, then they will be caught and all of their crimes would come to surface. So, in order to discourage further investigation, they forced her into calling her own mother. She was forced to say that she had run away by herself, but was safe and staying at some friend's house. They also forced her to ask her parents to stop any further police investigation, as she had run away by herself and was completely safe. Junko was kept at Minato residence during the whole torture, and when Minato's parents were present, she was forced to act as his girlfriend to eliminate any possible doubt by his parents. However, they later dropped this drama from his parents when it became clear to them that Minato's parents would not report them to the police. In later investigations, Minato's parents stated that they did not intervene in their child's activities with Junko because they were very aware of Miyano's Yakuza connections and feared that if they intervened in the boy's business, then the Yakuza members might attack on them or hurt them. Their own son Minato too was increasingly violent towards them. His brother was also aware of this situation and the rape that were happening with Junko, but did nothing to prevent it. The total time during which Junko was kept in the Minato residence was for 40 days. She was raped, abused, and tortured. The boys also invited other Yakuza members who were their friends to come and rape Junko, during which many of them tortured and beat her. It is believed that more than 100 men had raped Junko. They repeatedly raped and tortured her in various ways. Later, the boys confessed that just the four of them had raped her more than 400 times. They also confessed that they regularly beat her, starved her, hung her from the ceiling to use her as a punching bag. They also dropped barbells onto her stomach and forced her to eat live cockroaches. She was also forced to drink her own urine and masturbate in front of them. They also forced her to dance and sing to songs while being beaten by them. They also reportedly inserted many objects into her vagina, rectum, and anus. Furthermore, they also inserted a lit light bulb and fireworks into herself. They confessed that they burned her vagina and clitoris with cigarettes and lighters and her eyelids with hot wax. They also tore off her left nipple with pliers and pierced her breast with sewing needles. And of course, after all of this torture, Junko was reported to have slipped into unconsciousness because of these repeated assaults, which in turn led the boys to drown her head into a bucket of water each time to continue their torture. Some accomplices have been officially identified, including Tetsuo Nakamura and Koichi Ihara, who were charged with rape after their DNA was found on and inside the Junko's body. Ihara have been reported to be allegedly bullied into raping Junko, and after he left the Minato household, he told his brother about the incident. His brother subsequently told their parents, who then contacted the police, and as a result of this, 2 police officers were sent to the Minato residence. However, they were informed by the boys that there were no girls inside the house. The police officers declined the invitation to come and look inside the house, believing that the invitation alone was sufficient proof that there was nothing to be found inside the house. Later, both police officers faced a backlash from the community and were fired for failing to follow the procedure. If they had searched the house that day, they would have saved Junko from the hell-like treatment she was going through, and all of this case would have lasted only for 16 days. It would also have been much easier and possible for Junko to recover from her injuries if she was saved that day. Another attempt was made to reach the police in the beginning of December. Junko herself had attempted to call the police. She was, however, discovered by Miyano before she could say anything. When the police called back, Miyano told them that the original call was just a mistake and told them to not worry about it. Junko, as a punishment for trying to call the police, the boys tossed her legs and feet in lighter fuel and set them on fire. They also pushed a large bottle into her anus, causing a severe internal bleeding. She reportedly went into convulsions. Later, the boys confessed that they thought that she was faking the seizure, so they set her on fire once again. Unfortunately, she survived these injuries and got continued to be raped and tortured. They also confessed that Junko had asked them many times to just kill her and get it over with, but they refused to do so. Instead, they punished her for asking something like this. They forced her to sleep outside on the balcony during winter time and locked her in a freezer. One of the boys told the court that her hands and legs were so badly damaged that it took her over an hour to drag herself downstairs to go to the washroom. Due to the severity of the torture, she eventually lost her bladder and bowel control and was subsequently beaten for urinating on the floor. She was also unable to drink water or consume food and would vomit after each attempt, for which she received further beatings from the boys. The brutal attacks from the boys drastically altered Junko's appearance. Her face was so swollen that it was difficult to make out her features. Her body was also severely crippled, giving off a rotting smell that caused the 4 boys to lose any sexual interest in her. And as a result, the boys kidnapped another 19-year-old woman who, like Junko, was on her way home from work. She was also gang raped by the boys. On January 4, 1989, Hiroshi Miyano lost a game of mahjong, after which he decided to vent his anger on Junko. At this point, however, Junko was barely even alive, and because of this, the boys got frustrated and beat her with an iron barbell, kicked and punched her, and placed 2 short candles on her eyelids, resulting in them burning from the hot wax. They then made her stand and struck her feet with a stick. At this, she fell into a stereo unit and collapsed into a fit of convulsions. Since she was already bleeding profusely and pus was emerging from her earlier infected burns, the 4 boys covered their hands in plastic bags so that her pus wouldn't get on their hands. They then continued to beat her once again and dropped an iron exercise ball onto her stomach several times. They poured lighter fuel onto her thighs, arms, face, and stomach and once again set her on fire. Junko tried her best to put out the fire, but eventually became unresponsive. The attack was said to have lasted for about 2 hours. On that day, Junko finally succumbed to her wounds and died. A few hours after Junko's death, Nobuharu Minato's brother called him to tell him that Junko appeared to be dead to him. The boys, being afraid of getting locked up for murder, wrapped her body in several blankets and shoved her into a travel bag. They then put her body in a 208-liter drum and filled it with wet concrete. At around 8 p.m., they loaded the drum and eventually disposed of the drum into a cement truck in Koto, Tokyo. On January 23, 1989, Hiroshi Miyano and Joe Ogura were arrested for the gang rape of the 19-year-old woman who they had kidnapped in December. On March 29, 2 police officers came to interrogate them, as women's underwear had been found at their addresses. During the interrogation, One of the officers led Miyano into believing that police were aware of a murder committed by Miyano. Thinking that Joe Ogura probably confessed to the crimes done against Junko, Miyano told the police where to find Junko's body. The police were originally confused by the confession, as they had been referring to the murder of a different woman and her 7-year-old son that had occurred 9 days prior to Junko's abduction. That case, by the way, remains unsolved to this day. The police found the drum containing Junko's body the following day. She was identified via her fingerprints. When Junko's body was found, ornament C bottles had been inserted into her anus. Her face was unrecognizable, and she had become pregnant from the repeated rapes. Despite the shocking brutality of their crime, the identities of the boys were sealed by the code, as they were all considered to be juveniles at the time of the crime. Journalists from the Shukan Bunshun magazine discovered their identities, however, and published them. They stated that given the severity of the crime, the accused did not deserve to have their right to anonymity upheld. Rather than murder, all 4 boys pled guilty to committing bodily injury that resulted in death. In July 1990, a lower court sentenced Hiroshi Miyano, the alleged leader of the crime, to 17 years in prison. He appealed his sentence, but Tokyo High Court Judge Ryuji Yanase sentenced him to an additional 3 years in prison. The 20-year sentence is the second highest sentence given in Japan before life imprisonment. He was 18 at the time of the murder. Miyano's mother reportedly sent Junko's parents 50 million yen after selling their family house. Miyano was denied parole in 2004. In January 2013, Miyano was rearrested for fraud. Due to insufficient evidence, he was released without charge later that month. Nobuharu Minato, who originally received a 4 to 6 year sentence, was resentenced to 5 to 9 years by Judge Ryuji Yanase upon appeal. He was 16 at the time of the murder. Minato's parents and brother were not charged. After his release, Minato moved in with his mother. In 2018, Minato was arrested again for attempting murder after beating a 32-year-old man with a metal rod and slashing his throat with a knife. Yasushi Watanabe, who was originally sentenced to 3 to 4 years in prison, received an upgraded sentence of 5 to 7 years. He was 17 at the time of the murder. For his role in the crime, Joe Ogura served 8 years in a juvenile prison before he was released in August 1999. He was 17 at the time of the murder. After his release, he is said to have boasted about his role in the kidnapping, rape, and torture of Junko. Ogura's mother allegedly vandalized Junko's grave, stating that she had ruined her son's life. It also had been reported that Ogura had depleted his father's savings, money which was intended to be provided as a restitution to Junko's family, buying and consuming a number of luxury goods. These sentences were largely regarded as being far too light for the crimes committed, and all 4 individuals were protected by special provisions applied to individuals 18 years old and younger. Junko Furuta's funeral was held on 2nd of April 1989. Junko's intended future employer presented her parents with the uniform she would have worn in the position she had accepted. The uniform was placed in her casket. At her graduation, Junko's school principal presented her with a high school diploma, which was given to her parents. The location near where Junko's body was discovered has been developed since and is now Nivakasu Park.